Hello, race fans. Good morning. It's the weekend, and upstairs I've got every single machine doing chores that I can have done, so I've got a little time to play down here. And I thought I'd talk about some track updates. So, if you've watched a couple of my other videos and you look at this track today, you'll see that there's a couple of changes, and they're pretty fundamentally relevant, especially since I tend to race with relatives. And let's just say they're not very good. So, what I did was I made a few alterations to make the track a little easier to drive and to be a little less hard on my cars. Let's start with some of the cosmetic things first. You'll notice that I've removed aprons in a couple of key places, mostly coming down the hill on the inside of the turn, on the far side there, on the inside of this. I've moved it to the outside here, and really just sort of trim back on the fun. The reason I did that was grass actually serves a very good purpose in this track, and I'm not using your flat grass pool mat. I'm actually using I think it's for people who like to let their dogs pee indoors. You can get it at Home Depot for like I want to say $40 for a 6-foot by 10-foot roll or something like that, and it's got some pretty good pile. It's about maybe an inch. And all that pile helps to dissipate speed when a car leaves the track. And you really want that. The same reason that they put gravel on the outside of professional race courses. And that's to slow the car down and dissipate energy. Because if you dissipate energy, it doesn't damage the car. It doesn't damage the driver, which, in this case, damaging the driver means damaging the car and then I damage the driver. But, we don't want that either. So, the grass here serves a very important physical purpose, not just a cosmetic purpose, and I wanted to have more of it available. The other thing was I just felt like the whole course was starting to look more like pavement, and it looked more like a skate park, and I wanted it to feel a little bigger, and by making the roads narrower, it actually does help aesthetically make the track look like it takes up more real estate. On to some of the functional changes. Down the far side of the course here, I've tightened up what is actually turn 1, 2, 3. It used to be that the R1 curves ended at a 90-degree angle, and then I had R2, which took it all the way to the base here. Of the back straight. The problem with that was it meant that I had to have one of these plastic fences right up against the track, and cars were starting to pile up at the forward edge of that fence. So by narrowing the curve, making it tighter, it now goes through two 60-degree number ones before switching over to number twos. I brought the whole track forward this way, now had the ability to put a runoff curb on the outside, which allows cars to fishtail naturally and actually helps keep them on the track. So we actually have less crashes on that turn than we used to. The other thing that did was that let me replace the R1 shunt over here under the bridge with an R3. That serves a couple purposes. Obviously, R3, much wider radius turn. It's going to be a lot easier to navigate. With the old track, let me see if I can find the piece here. Oh, it's not close. If you were in the outside lane, you were hard up against the fence, and so you could just go full throttle coming down under the bridge, rub off some paint, and come all the way to here. Now, with the addition of the apron, you have to deal with fishtailing, so you have to slow down a little bit, but not much because it's an R3 turn. So it improves your racing if you're on the outside of this turn, the inside of this turn. On the other side, if you were coming down and you were in this lane, on an R1 turn, you were going to fishtail. And that did a couple things. First of all, the chance of you wrecking around here was very high. Cars would come out almost perpendicular to the track. And a lot of times they just flip. But if you did manage to slow down enough that you didn't do that, you lost a ton of ground coming into the outside of this turn, which is arguably an overtaking opportunity otherwise. Because it is slightly higher radius. You can go a lot faster than your competitor here. You should be able to overtake on this turn if you can keep your velocity up. Having to sap all your velocity here meant you didn't have enough time to regain your velocity going through the terrapin. So widening the turn helped both sides. It forced the outside to have the same competitive problems that the inside does, and it gave the inside a little bit more relaxation so they could go faster. I think this radically changed the racing profile. The other thing it did was, although it didn't move the overall size of the inside versus outside lanes on the track, it did even out the speeds. The outside lane is now very fast. The inside lane is shorter, but you have to slow down a lot more. So I think it's going to lead to much closer racing on both lanes. The final thing I did was on this side, coming out of the hairpin turn, I used to have 60 degrees of number 1 followed by 30 degrees of number 2 going the other direction. 60 degrees of number 2 going the other direction. And then underneath the bridge, I started the hill climb. And at the top of the hill, I had a number 3 turn heading back down the back straight. This was causing a lot of problems. People were starting to accelerate here, perceiving this to be the apex of the hairpin. It's not. The apex is like here. It's a very late apex turn. When they do that, they're going too fast. And when there's a direction switch here, they're going to be sideways. They're going to roll over. The sad thing was, they'd start fishtailing here. Then they'd hit their breaking point, roll over, go under the bridge, and get stuck by the hill. And now it's a full track call. You got to stop everything, go get the pliers, come underneath, grab it, pull everything out. By relaxing this so that's a straightaway, assumptions about this being the apex are closer to being right. It's still a later apex than that, but you're not going to hurt yourself as much here. You straighten out. It's a much gentler turn coming this way, so the opportunity for fishtailing is a lot less. Notice there's no apron on the outside of this turn. I looked into doing that, and what I found was that no matter what I did, I could not get the car fast enough to hang out over the edge of this turn. So we don't need a curb here. The other thing I did was by moving the turn onto the back straight to be at the same level as this. It's actually a bank turn, so the bank turn serves as the bottom of the hill. It solved another problem I was having, which is cars could accelerate, good sticky cars with good tires, could accelerate up the hill, and then they'd have to make a turn, and they'd come airborne off the top of the hill, miss their slot in the turn, and slam into the wall. So now you're getting a wreck for trying to have an advantage, which was no fun. So by moving the hill to the end, if the car becomes airborne now, it's going to be airborne on the back straight. When it lands, it's going to land right back in its own slot, and it's going to continue. So that's just better racing. It's a lot more fun. And then having the bank turn is the bottom of the hill, does two things. First of all, it's a great space saver. Bank turn, I mean, the hills are two straights, and you know, it's a reasonable size layout. It's about 17 feet long, but it's not huge. And every millimeter of space counts. So by combining a turn and a hill together, you can really compress. And that's a trick that I learned from model railroading, is like how to figure out how to jam the right stuff in the right space at the right time. And that's, if you can make a piece of track do two jobs, make it do two jobs. As long as it doesn't affect racing. So now we have a gentle S-curve up a hill onto the back straight. The final thing I did was I added half track extensions through a couple of quarter pieces on both sides of the back straight and the forward straight to push the final turn, which is turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, turn 8. Just push turn 8 back, a good 8 inches. That gave me more grass on the inside of turn 3, on the outside of turn 3, which was really important. You see these tire barriers I've created, which is basically a drainage pipe wrapped in duct tape. The tire barrier on the outside of turn 3 is just a who's who of what color was the leading arrow strakes of your car. There was tons of scarring damage on that. The duct tape that's wrapping this is actually not a good surface for slowing cars down, because the cars just dig into the tape and stick, and then just rip pieces off the car. So I needed to push it back to give some of this energy dissipating grass a chance to take effect. And I think that's worked out really well for me so far. It's also made the track a little longer, which of course we like a bigger track. But you know, those changes right there, they're all geared around, one, preserving my cars by making racing easier, and two, just making racing more fun, because who likes track calls? Nobody. You know, I think this is probably the final layout for the Attleboro Speedway. Now that I've got it there, I'm going to start adding scenery, cover up all these wood pieces. I may actually pull the whole track up and make the grass more aesthetically like lumpy to match the grades on the track, and just really kind of bring it up to more of a model perspective. But from a racing perspective, it's a lot more fun now. I think it's a faster track. I'm going to turn on Smart Race and do a couple laps with my Mustang and just show you what the difference is between the inside and the outside lap. Okay, we got Smart Race up. I just want to take a minute to show you this car. So this is a Carrera, what they call a Mustang GTY. This is a 2021 car. I think they're really pretty. It's a fantasy car. How much of a fantasy car? Notice, although it does come with a spoiler, I've taken the spoiler off because I need to reinforce it. I got tired of leaving it behind on turn 3. But it doesn't even have rear view mirrors. Instead, in the cockpit, you can kind of see the driver definitely has like a video screen on both the left and the right side. So I think it's supposed to be like super cool techno camera based rear view mirrors, which is kind of fun. It's like, I guess, like the idea is like if Ford Mustang's going to race GT3, this is what they look like. A couple things about it. When you get this car weighs 117 grams stock, which is pretty heavy. On my track, I have a minimum weight of 113. Most of my cars are weighted to 113, 114 grams. I know that's like insane because some, you know, on average, Carrera cars are over 100 grams to start with. So it's not as big a deal as you think, but it really does even out. Some cars are just stupid light, and they just behave differently. And again, I've got a lot of amateur drivers, so it's more about the racing experience and less about, you know, absolute competition. You know, I have a couple of analog slot guys that I've recently hooked up with, and I can't bring these to their track because their cars are all 90 grams and all aluminum and super fancy. And, you know, these guys won't, these cars won't hang with them, I don't think. But they're just fine for home. They're just fine for most of my friends that also have Carrera. But these are great. I don't have to weight them. As a matter of fact, they're a little top heavy. So inside the chassis, inside the shell, what I've done is I've trimmed off some of the extra plastic that's used to just hold all the decorative elements in there, and just glue the decorative elements in just to try and get the weight lower. So this car actually weighs 115 grams. So it's lighter than stock. But you know, I'm not doing anything fancy. There's no body float. There's no nothing. This is just remove a little weight from the top of the car to make it a little easier to handle. I've replaced the stock Carrera guide with a slot invasion guide. I love these guides. They really did change my life in terms of making the cars easier to control, and just giving better performance. But it's stock brakes, stock tires, stock everything. So let me put this on the track. We'll take it around a few times, and I'll let you know what kind of scores I'm getting. I'm going to start with the inside lane. That's the faster lane. So we'll get some sense of you know, what a car can do with this new modification.
Fastest lap.
That's a 539.
Fastest lap.
5038. 5006. Oh, and I think that's about all it's got in it.
Fastest lap by Rex.
That's a 5.1.
Fastest lap by Rex.
5096. Oh. So, yeah, before a good outside lap time was about 5:03, maybe 5:02 if you could really hang. But I'm able to hit a 5096, you know, sort of casually. Let me see if I can do better than that. Nope, maybe not. So making these changes, these subtle changes, just opening up some of the curves and providing more room for runoff and therefore to allow the cars to drift a little bit better. We made some major changes to the way this track behaves. I think it's a lot more fun to drive. In some ways, it's less challenging, which kind of sucks. But again, you know, I don't like picking up my car off the track. So being able to put in some fast laps is really great.